Lonely Woodsman takes in a widow and her 3 children. Unaware they will become his family, forever Rowan lived where most people refuse to live. Past the last gravel road, past the signal towers, deep inside the whisperwood of planet Kestrel 9. People in the mining colony called him a woodsman, but his work was more than cutting trees. He harvested alien timber for repairs, built storm shields, and kept the old forest paths clear so supply drones would not crash. He did it alone. His cabin sat on a ridge like a stubborn nail hammered into the wild. Solar panels clung to the roof. A small wind turbine clicked in the cold air. A rusted satellite dish pointed at a sky that often ignored it. Around the cabin, the forest glowed faintly at night, soft blues and pale greens from moss that liked the planet's thin sunlight. Rowan liked the quiet. Quiet meant no promises, no goodbyes, no names spoken with grief. Inside, his only company was a battered service drone he had repaired from scrap. It rolled on 3 wheels and had a simple voice. Rowan had named it Patch because it always needed patching. "Air pressure dropping," Patch said one evening, its speaker buzzing a little. "Storm probability 87%. Rowan tightened a bolt on the heater unit and didn't look up. "Then it'll storm." Patch made a small beep like it wanted to say more. It always did. Rowan always ended the conversation. He moved through his routines like a man walking a trail he had walked too many times. He stacked firewood bricks made from compressed fiber. He checked the water recycler. He cleaned the filter on his breathing mask even though he rarely needed it inside. Planet Kestrel 9 had air that humans could handle for short periods, but the storms carried fine dust that made the lungs burn. Outside, the wind began to rise. Rowan stepped onto the porch and looked over the tree tops. The whisperwood swayed, not like earth pines, but like tall reeds in a dark sea. In the far distance, lightning flashed behind the mountains. The clouds were thick and low, moving fast as if chased. Patch rolled to the doorway, its sensor lens turning. "Recommendation, secure outer shutters." Rowan nodded. He closed and latched the metal shutters over the windows one by one. He strapped down the supply crates, checked the anchor cables, and made sure the small barn, more a shed for tools, was sealed tight. He was almost finished when Patch's voice changed, becoming sharper. "Signal detected." Rowan froze, one hand on a latch. "From the colony, negative, emergency beacon, range 4.2 kilometers, moving." Rowan stared into the forest. In storms, people stayed indoors. Even the colony security patrol avoided the whisperwood when the clouds turned mean. Anyone out there now was either lost, reckless, or desperate. Rowan told himself he didn't care. He did care. That was the problem. "Show me," Rowan said. Patch projected a small map on the porch rail, a blue grid with a blinking red dot. The dot wobbled, then slowed. Rowan's jaw tightened. "They'll die in that wind," Patch beeped softly. "Probability of fatal exposure, high." Rowan looked at his cabin door, then back at the map. He had built this life to be untouched. He had chosen it, but the red dot on the map didn't stop blinking. Rowan grabbed his coat, thick and lined with insulation strips. He clipped a headlamp to his collar and took a rope and a thermal blanket. Then he stepped off the porch and into the forest. The wind hit him like a slap. Dust swirled in thin sheets, stinging his cheeks. His boots crunched through frost and brittle leaf matter. He moved fast, guided by Patch's signal updates through an earpiece. The whisperwood was different in storms. The glowing moss dimmed as if hiding. The trees groaned and bent. Sometimes Rowan heard clicking calls from creatures that lived in the branches, nervous and angry at the weather. He pushed forward. After 10 minutes, he saw something unnatural in the dark, metal reflecting lightning. A small transport craft lay tilted in a shallow ravine, one wing broken and half buried in alien ferns. Its lights were off. Steam rose from the engine vents, and the whole frame creaked each time the wind shoved it. Rowan climbed down carefully. "Hello," he called. "Anyone alive?" A weak voice answered from behind a piece of torn hull. "Please don't leave." Rowan moved around the wreckage and found them. A woman knelt in the dirt, holding 2 children close. A third child, older, stood in front of them with clenched fists, shaking from cold but trying to look brave. The woman's hair was tangled and wet from storm mist. Her face was pale and her lips looked blue at the edges. Rowan's eyes went to the children first. The youngest, maybe 5, clutched a small broken toy animal and stared at him with wide, frightened eyes. The middle child sniffed, tears freezing on their cheeks. The oldest, perhaps 10, stared at Rowan as if he expected him to be a threat. Rowan softened his voice. I'm not here to hurt you. The woman swallowed hard. We crashed. The nav lights died. The wind, her words broke apart, half lost to shivering. Rowan crouched, keeping his hands visible. Can you walk? The woman tried to stand, but nearly fell. Rowan caught her elbow carefully. She flinched, then realized he was steadying her and nodded once, embarrassed. Name, Rowan asked, because names made people real and he needed to know if he could handle that. Mara, she whispered, and my kids, Juno, Eli, and Finn. The oldest child, Finn, lifted his chin. We're not thieves, Rowan blinked. I didn't say you were. Finn's voice cracked anyway. We didn't mean to land here. Rowan looked at the wrecked craft. It wasn't a cheap junker. It had colony markings, but also travel stickers, routes, towns, faded logos from places Rowan had never cared to visit. Where were you going? Rowan asked. Mara's eyes flicked away. Anywhere safe. Rowan didn't push. He could see enough. A woman with 3 children didn't fly into a frontier storm unless she had no other choice. He pulled out the thermal blanket and wrapped it around Juno and Eli first. Finn resisted, but Rowan draped the edge over him too. Come with me, Rowan said. My cabin is close. Mara stared at him as if she couldn't believe kindness could exist out here. Why would you help us? Rowan's throat tightened. He almost said, because I know what it's like to lose people. Instead he said, because you're freezing. That was safer. He tied the rope around his waist and offered the other end to Finn. Hold this, don't let go. Finn hesitated, then took it with stiff pride. Rowan led them up out of the ravine, step by careful step. Mara leaned on Rowan's arm, trying not to show how weak she felt. The children moved like tiny shadows behind him, guided by the headlamp and the sound of his boots. The storm worsened as they climbed. Wind snapped branches and sent dust into their faces. At one point, Eli stumbled and Rowan grabbed the child's shoulder to steady them. Eli flinched, then whispered, Sorry. Rowan shook his head. No sorry, just keep moving. When the cabin finally appeared through the trees, dark shape, shutters closed, Mara let out a broken sound that was half relief, half exhaustion. Rowan hurried them onto the porch and inside. Warm air hit them immediately. Juno made a small, amazed noise. Eli began to cry, not loud, just quiet tears of safety. Finn stood by the door like a guard dog, still suspicious, still shaking. Patch rolled up, its lens glowing. Medical scan recommended. Finn jumped back. What is that? Rowan shut the door against the storm and turned the lock. That's Patch, it's harmless. Patch beeped as if offended. I am helpful. Rowan pointed toward the stove. Sit, all of you. Myra lowered herself onto a bench near the heater. The children huddled close, the blanket wrapped around them like a shared nest. Rowan found cups and poured warm water, then mixed in rehydration powder. He set the cups in front of them. Drink, he said. Myra took small sips, then handed her cup to Juno. Her hands trembled as she tucked hair behind her ear. Thank you, she murmured again, as if the words were the only thing keeping her from falling apart. Rowan didn't answer right away. He moved to a storage cabinet and pulled out protein packs and dried fruit strips. Simple food, not fancy, but food. Finn watched everything. Is this your place? He asked. Rowan nodded. Yes. You live here alone? Rowan paused. Patch made a soft beep as if it knew the answer carried weight. Yes, Rowan said finally. Finn looked around. His eyes took in the tools, the maps, the shelves of spare parts. Why? Rowan didn't want to explain. Instead, he pointed toward the kids. Eat first. Juno whispered to Mara, he looks scary. Mara stroked Juno's hair. He came into a storm for us, she whispered back. That's not scary. Rowan heard it anyway. He pretended he didn't. As the family ate, color slowly returned to their faces. The children's shoulders loosened. Eli's crying slowed. Juno stopped staring at Rowan like he was a monster. Finn still held the rope end in his hand even though it wasn't tied anymore. Patch rolled closer and projected a gentle blue light. Body temperature improving, Rowan sighed. Good. Myra looked at the closed shutters and the trembling door. The storm, it's bad, Rowan nodded. It'll last through the night. Mara's eyes widened. We can't go back to the ship. No, Rowan said. Not tonight, she swallowed. Then we'll stay here? Rowan's mind screamed, no, don't bring this into my life. Don't fill my cabin with voices. Don't make me care. But he saw Juno's small hands gripping the toy. He saw Eli's tired eyes drooping. He saw Finn trying to be strong at an age where no child should have to be strong. He saw Myra's face, holding back fear so her children wouldn't drown in it. Rowan forced his voice to stay calm. You'll stay, there's room. Myra's shoulders sagged with relief so deep it almost looked like pain. "Just until morning," she said quickly, as if afraid to ask for more. Rowan nodded, though he wasn't sure morning would fix anything. Just until morning. He led them to the small spare room, a storage room he had cleared long ago but rarely used. He laid out thick blankets and set a small heat lamp near the floor. The children climbed onto the bedding like they had been given a treasure. Finn hesitated at the doorway. "You won't send us away?" Rowan met the boy's eyes. "Not in this storm." Finn nodded slowly. For the first time, his fists unclenched. Rowan stepped back into the main room and closed the door halfway, leaving it cracked so the heat could flow. Myra followed him quietly. In the dim cabin light, she looked older than she probably was. "I don't know how to repay you," she said. Rowan stared at the floorboards. "You don't." Myra's eyes glistened. "People in the colony, they don't help without wanting something." Rowan felt a tightness in his chest. "I'm not the colony." Outside, the storm slammed against the cabin walls. Something heavy struck the roof, then rolled off. Patch's sensors clicked. Rowan glanced at the map table where he had left the emergency signal tracker. The red dot still blinked, now stable right here in his cabin. He had opened the door to save them from the storm. Now the storm was inside his life. Rowan turned away before Mara could read his face. "Get some sleep," he said. "We'll talk about your ship after the winds calm." Mara nodded. "Okay." As she returned to the children, Rowan stood alone near the shutters, listening to the wild world outside and the softer world inside. The cabin no longer sounded empty. It sounded lived in. Rowan told himself it was temporary. But the Whisperwood had a strange way of keeping what it touched. Morning came slowly to the Whisperwood. The storm had passed during the night, leaving behind a heavy silence that felt almost sacred. Thin light filtered through the metal shutters, painting pale lines across the cabin floor. Rowan woke early, as always. Years of living alone had trained his body to rise before sunrise, before sound, before thought. But today was different. He heard breathing that was not his own. Soft voices drifted from the spare room, a child whispering, another laughing quietly. Rowan stood near the stove for a moment, unsure what to do with himself. The cabin felt smaller, warmer, alive. Patch rolled across the floor and stopped beside him. "External conditions, stable, storm damage, minor." Rowan nodded. "Good." He opened the shutters one by one. Outside, the forest shimmered with leftover moisture. The glowing moss along the trees shone brighter after rain, turning the forest into a soft green ocean. Behind him, the spare room door opened slowly. Finn stepped out first, cautious but curious. His eyes moved across the cabin like he was studying a puzzle. "You wake early," Finn said. Rowan shrugged. "Work starts early." Finn nodded, trying to look older than he was. "I can help." Rowan raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Soon the others joined. Eli yawned loudly, and Juno carried her broken toy like it was a treasure. Mara followed last, looking rested but still unsure of her place in the cabin. "Good morning," she said gently. Rowan nodded once. "Food is there." He pointed to the small table where he had placed protein packs and warm drink cups. The children ate quickly. Hunger made them quiet. Rowan watched without meaning to. He noticed how Mara always checked that the kids ate first before taking anything for herself. He noticed how Finn sat near the edge of the table, always watching the door. After breakfast, Rowan grabbed his coat. "We check your ship today." Mara stood immediately. "Thank you." The children insisted on coming. Rowan hesitated but eventually agreed, giving each of them a small breathing mask in case the air grew dusty. The forest felt peaceful after the storm. Droplets fell from branches like slow rain. Strange, bird-like creatures moved between the trees, their feathers glowing faintly. Juno gasped. "It's beautiful." Rowan glanced at her. He had never thought of the forest that way. To him it was work, survival. Seeing it through a child's eyes made it feel new. They reached the wrecked transport after a careful walk. Rowan studied the damage closely, running his hand along the cracked metal. "Engine housing broken," he said quietly. "Navigation fried. It will take time." Myra's shoulders dropped slightly. "How long?" Rowan hesitated. "Weeks, maybe more. Parts are hard to find out here." The words hung in the air. Finn kicked a small stone, frustration showing. Eli leaned closer to Mara. Juno looked at Rowan like she was waiting for him to say something comforting, but he didn't know how. "We stay?" Juno asked softly. "For now," Rowan said. Back at the cabin, life slowly settled into routine. Rowan cut wood while Finn followed, asking questions about tools. Rowan showed him how to hold a blade safely, how to test balance before cutting. Finn listened carefully, eager to prove himself useful. Eli helped Patch inside, pressing buttons and laughing when the drone made funny beeps. Patch seemed pleased with the attention, projecting little blue lights that made Eli clap. Juno wandered near the porch, collecting glowing leaves and arranging them in patterns. Rowan found himself watching her smile more often than he expected. Mara worked beside him without being asked. She repaired torn cloth, cleaned surfaces, and helped organize storage crates. She moved with quiet strength, never complaining. Days passed. The cabin filled with small sounds, footsteps, laughter, questions. Rowan found himself speaking more. He explained the forest's dangers, told them which plants to avoid, and showed them how to follow safe paths. One evening, while fixing a broken fence line, Mara spoke softly. "You didn't always live alone, did you?" Rowan's hands paused on the tool. "No," he said after a moment. "She didn't push. You don't have to tell me." Rowan surprised himself by continuing anyway. "I had a crew once. We worked together, built things, protected this region." His voice lowered. "They're gone now." Mara nodded slowly. "Lost changes people." "Yes," Rowan said simply. They worked in silence after that, but something had shifted. A quiet understanding settled between them. A few days later, Rowan noticed something unusual while checking the perimeter sensors. Strange mechanical signals flickered on the screen. Patch rolled closer. "Unidentified machines detected. Direction north." Rowan frowned. "Hunters," the word felt heavy. Corporate resource hunters sometimes entered the Whisperwood, searching for rare alien minerals. They didn't care about the ecosystem. They didn't care about who lived nearby. Rowan felt tension rise inside him. That evening he told Mara. "Machines are coming into the forest," he said. "We must be careful." Mara's face tightened. "Dangerous?" "Maybe," Rowan replied. "They take what they want." Finn overheard and stepped closer. "Will they come here?" Rowan didn't want to scare them. "I will make sure you are safe." The words came out before he realized what he was promising. That night, Rowan sat outside long after everyone slept. The forest hummed quietly around him. For the first time in years, he felt responsibility not only for himself, but for others. Inside the cabin, Juno woke and padded softly to the doorway. She watched Rowan sitting alone. "You don't sleep?" she asked. Rowan turned, surprised. "Sometimes later." She walked closer, holding her toy. "I like it here," she said simply. Rowan felt something warm in his chest. "It's only temporary," he replied gently. Juno tilted her head. "Maybe." She returned inside, leaving Rowan staring at the stars. Over the next days, the children grew more comfortable. Eli laughed freely. Finn began calling Rowan sir, sometimes without realizing it. Juno decorated a small corner of the cabin with glowing leaves, turning it into a tiny garden. Mara noticed Rowan smiling more, even if he didn't realize it himself. One afternoon, while repairing a solar panel together, she said quietly, "You saved us." Rowan shook his head. "Anyone would have done it." Mara looked at him carefully. "No, not anyone." He didn't answer. Compliments made him uncomfortable. But later, while watching the children play outside, Rowan realized something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Still, the warning from Patch's sensors stayed in his mind. Machines were entering the forest. And if they came too close, Rowan knew he would have to protect not only the Whisperwood, but the family slowly forming under his roof. He didn't know when they stopped being strangers. He only knew that when Juno laughed, when Eli ran toward him with questions, when Finn tried to copy his movements, the silence inside him felt less heavy. And that frightened him more than any storm. The Whisperwood changed slowly, but Rowan noticed every small difference. The air felt tighter. The animals moved more quietly. Even the glowing moss along the forest floor seemed dimmer, as if the land itself was uneasy. Rowan stood near the sensor table early one morning, watching blinking signals move across the small screen. Patch rolled beside him, projecting data lines. "Machines advancing," Patch said. "Distance decreasing." Rowan crossed his arms. He already knew what it meant. The corporate hunters were pushing deeper into the forest. They would not stop unless someone forced them to. Behind him, laughter filled the cabin. Juno chased Eli around the table while Finn tried to look serious but couldn't stop smiling. Mara watched them, her face softer than Rowan had ever seen. The sound of family made Rowan's chest feel heavy and warm at the same time. He turned away from the screen. He could not ignore the threat anymore. Later that day, Rowan gathered everyone near the porch. "We need new rules," he said calmly. Finn straightened immediately. Eli stopped moving. Juno hugged her toy. "What kind of rules?" Mara asked. "Machines are coming into the forest," Rowan explained. "You stay close to the cabin, no wandering alone." Mara nodded. "We understand." Finn lifted his chin. "We can help defend." Rowan shook his head gently. "Your job is to stay safe." Finn looked disappointed but accepted it. Rowan spent the afternoon checking traps and clearing paths around the cabin. He set motion alarms between the trees and strengthened the fence line. The forest had always been his responsibility, but now it felt personal. When he returned, Eli ran toward him with excitement. "Patch showed me how lights work," Eli said proudly. Patch beeped happily. Rowan almost smiled. Life continued despite danger. Mara cooked simple meals using supplies Rowan rarely touched. The cabin smelled warmer, more alive. At night, the children told stories before sleeping. Rowan listened from the other room without joining, but he stayed closer than before. One evening, Mara joined him outside while he repaired a broken tool. "You carry a lot alone," she said quietly. Rowan shrugged. "Used to it." Mara leaned against the porch rail. "You don't have to be alone anymore." The words lingered in the cold air. Rowan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he watched the trees move in the wind. "I don't know how to be anything else," he admitted finally. Mara smiled softly. "You're already learning." 2 days later, Patch's alarm sounded sharply. "Warning," the drone announced. "Unidentified machines within 1 kilometer." Rowan stood instantly. His body moved without hesitation. He grabbed his coat and stepped outside. Through the trees, faint metal shapes moved slowly, tall drilling machines walking on heavy legs. Smaller drones hovered nearby, scanning and marking trees with bright paint. Rowan's jaw tightened. They were damaging the forest. He returned inside quickly. "Stay here," he told Myra and the children. "Lock the door." Mara grabbed his arm. "What will you do?" "Talk first," Rowan said. "If they listen." Finn stepped forward. "Can I come?" "No," Rowan said firmly but gently. "Protect your family, that's your job." Finn nodded, trying to look brave. Rowan walked into the forest alone. The machines were louder up close, their engines humming like angry insects. A human figure stood near one of them, wearing a heavy suit with company logos. Rowan raised a hand. "This area is protected," he said calmly. "You need to leave." The worker laughed through his helmet speaker. "No one owns this forest." Rowan stayed calm. "You're damaging the ecosystem." "We're extracting resources," the worker replied. "Move along." Rowan realized talking would not change their minds. He returned to the cabin without arguing further. His silence worried Mara. "They won't stop," he said simply. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means we protect what we can." Over the next days, Rowan created a plan. He would not fight violently. Instead, he would disable their machines quietly. He studied their patterns, watched when they rested, and mapped their routes. Finn begged to help again. Rowan finally allowed him to assist with simple tasks, carrying tools, watching sensor screens. The boy worked carefully, proud to be trusted. One evening, Rowan prepared to leave after dark. Mara stopped him at the door. "You don't have to do this alone." Rowan shook his head. "Too dangerous." She looked at him seriously. "You're protecting more than trees now." He understood what she meant. Outside, Rowan moved silently between the trees. He reached the first drilling machine and carefully removed power connectors. Sparks flickered. The machine shut down with a long sigh. He moved to the second. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed behind him. Rowan turned sharply. Finn stood there, frozen, having stepped on a branch. "Finn," Rowan whispered harshly. "I wanted to help," Finn said, eyes wide. Before Rowan could answer, a drone turned toward them, its scanning light bright. Rowan reacted instantly. He grabbed Finn's shoulder and pulled him behind a tree. "Stay low," he whispered. The drone hovered closer. Rowan threw a small metal piece far into the bushes. The noise distracted the machine long enough for them to escape. They ran back through the forest. At one point, Finn stumbled and nearly fell down a slope. Rowan caught him just in time, pulling him against his chest. For a moment, Rowan felt a sharp fear, stronger than anything he had felt in years. "You could have been hurt," Rowan said quietly when they reached safety. Finn looked ashamed. "I just wanted to be strong like you." Rowan knelt in front of him. "Being strong means protecting people, not taking risks alone." Finn nodded slowly. When they returned to the cabin, Mara rushed forward, relief clear on her face. She hugged Finn tightly before looking at Rowan with gratitude and worry. That night, Rowan sat near the fire while the children slept. He replayed the moment when Finn almost fell. The fear he felt surprised him. These people were no longer strangers. They mattered. The next day, the disabled machines forced the hunters to retreat temporarily. The forest grew quiet again. The children celebrated with laughter. Eli danced with Patch. Juno decorated Rowan's workbench with glowing leaves again. Mara watched Rowan carefully. "You saved more than the forest," she said gently. Rowan looked at the children. "I didn't plan for this," he admitted. Mara smiled. "The best families are rarely planned." Rowan didn't respond, but inside something shifted. He realized he was no longer waiting for them to leave, and that realization both comforted and scared him. Outside, the whisperwood glowed softly under the evening sky, as if welcoming the change growing inside the lonely woodsman's heart. For several days, no machines entered the forest. The disabled equipment Rowan had sabotaged forced the corporate hunters to retreat. The air seemed lighter, and even the strange, glowing plants shone brighter at night. Rowan stood outside his cabin early one morning, watching mist rise between the trees. Birds with silver feathers moved across the branches, calling softly to one another. Behind him, laughter echoed from inside. Juno and Eli were arguing about whose turn it was to help Patch clean the floor. Finn tried to act serious but ended up laughing too. Mara's voice followed, warm and calm, guiding them gently. Rowan closed his eyes for a moment. The sound of life no longer felt strange. It felt right, but deep inside he knew this peace might not last forever. Later that day, Patch's voice broke the calm. "Incoming signal detected." Rowan turned sharply. "From the hunters?" "Negative," Patch replied. "Registered colony rescue ship. Landing request transmitted." Rowan froze. Mara stepped closer. "Rescue ship," Patch projected a message into the air. The colony authorities had tracked the crash signal and were sending transport to retrieve the stranded family. Silence filled the cabin. Eli stopped moving. Juno looked confused. Finn stared at Rowan. Mara's face showed mixed emotions, relief, uncertainty, and something deeper Rowan could not fully read. "They came for us," she whispered. Rowan nodded slowly. Of course they had. This had always been temporary. The rescue ship arrived the next afternoon, descending through the clouds with a deep humming sound. Dust and leaves swirled around the landing area as the engines slowed. The children watched from the porch, holding each other's hands. Rowan stood slightly behind them, arms crossed. Two uniformed officers stepped out, scanning the area before smiling kindly at Mara. "We're glad you're safe," one of them said. Mara nodded politely. "Thank you for coming." They spoke about travel arrangements, repairs, and schedules. The officers explained that the ship would leave before nightfall to avoid dangerous weather patterns. Rowan listened quietly. Everything felt too fast. Inside the cabin, Mara began packing their few belongings. The children moved slowly, as if hoping time would slow down. Juno sat near the glowing leaf garden she had created, touching each leaf carefully. "Do we have to go?" she asked softly. Mara hesitated. "We need to think about it." Finn watched Rowan. "You knew this would happen." Rowan nodded. "Yes." "Then why do you look sad?" Finn asked directly. Rowan didn't answer immediately. He had lived alone for years without needing to explain his feelings. Now words felt heavy. "I'm used to quiet," he said finally. Finn understood more than Rowan expected. The boy nodded slowly. As evening approached, the officers returned to escort them to the ship. The children stood near Rowan. Eli hugged him suddenly, without warning. Rowan froze for a moment before gently placing a hand on the child's shoulder. "Thank you for teaching me things," Eli said. Rowan swallowed hard. "You learned fast." Juno stepped forward next. She held out her broken toy. "You can keep this," she said seriously. Rowan blinked. "No, it belongs to you." "But you need something to remember us," she insisted. Rowan carefully closed her fingers around the toy again. "I won't forget." Finally, Finn approached. He stood tall, trying not to show emotion. "I'll come back someday," he said. Rowan felt a tightness in his chest. "You'll always be welcome." Mara waited until the children walked toward the ship before speaking to Rowan alone. "You changed our lives," she said softly. Rowan shook his head. "You were strong already." Mara smiled gently. "Strength grows when someone believes in you." They stood facing each other, the forest quiet around them. "I thought I was only passing through," she continued. "But this place, this cabin, it feels like home." Rowan's heart beat faster. "Mara," he said slowly, "you don't have to decide now." She studied his face carefully. "What do you want?" The question surprised him. For years, he had stopped asking himself what he wanted. Survival had been enough. Now he saw the children laughing near the ship. He saw the warm light inside his cabin. He felt the echo of their voices filling the space that once held only silence. "I don't want to lose this," he admitted quietly. Mara's eyes softened. "Then maybe we don't have to leave." Rowan stared at her, unsure he heard correctly. "The colony is safe," she continued, "but it never felt like home. Here we found peace. The children feel safe, and she paused, searching for the right words. "I feel like we belong," Rowan's breath caught. "You would stay?" he asked. "If you want us here," she replied gently. "Not as guests, as family." The word felt powerful, family. Rowan looked toward the forest, remembering long years of loneliness, quiet meals, and empty nights. Then he looked at Mara, strong, kind, steady, and at the children who had filled his life with warmth without asking permission. Slowly he nodded. "Yes," he said. "Stay." Mara smiled, relief and happiness shining in her eyes. They walked together toward the officers and explained their decision. The officers seemed surprised but respected their choice. Soon, the rescue ship lifted into the sky and disappeared beyond the clouds. Silence returned, but not the old lonely silence, a peaceful one. That evening, they shared a simple meal around the table. The children laughed and talked about future plans, building a bigger garden, repairing the barn, exploring safe forest paths. Rowan listened, feeling something new growing inside him. Hope. Later, as the stars appeared, he stood on the porch watching the children play outside. Mara joined him quietly. "You're smiling," she said. Rowan hadn't noticed. "I think," he began slowly, "this cabin feels different now." "It feels like a home," Mara replied. Rowan nodded. The whisperwood glowed softly around them, as if welcoming the change. The lonely woodsman who once avoided connection now watched his new family with calm pride. He had opened his door to strangers during a storm. Without realizing it, he had opened his heart as well. And for the first time in many years, Rowan understood that the greatest shelter was not the cabin he built with his hands, but the family he had built without planning, chosen by fate and strengthened by love. The forest no longer felt empty. Neither did he.